This is a Japanese steak recipe. When I first saw it, I could not believe my eyes.
Big thanks to Kamado Joe for sponsoring this episode.
This is the steak, a Japanese tenderloin. Now of course in Japan they do everything different. They even breed their cows differently, and that's why they have amazing beef. And we don't. And if you're in the beef industry, then please fix it, please. Because everyone wants beef like this. Not because it's expensive, because it shouldn't be. It should be a really normal, common cut of beef. Enough ranting. I'm going to show you how this Japanese steak recipe actually works, and we're going to discover together what it tastes like. I'll be using the Kamado Joe Big Joe to cook this steak. I'm going to set my Kamado Joe up for a direct cooking zone on a cast iron plate and an indirect zone where I can warm up my steak. First thing that I'm going to do is get rid of the ashes from the last cook. Load it up with some Kamado Joe Big Block. Put in a couple of fire starters, light them up. We're going to give the charcoal a little bit of time to get fired up. I'm going to bank all of the charcoal to one side. On top of that, I'm going to place my cast iron grill plate, and over the indirect side I'm going to place a grill grate. I'm going to take my Japanese steak, put in a thermometer all the way, and then place it over indirect heat. I'm going to slowly let it smoke and get up to temperature while I set my barbecue to smoke at a temperature of around 120 degrees Celsius. The steak reached the core temperature of 48 degrees Celsius, and now it has a beautiful smoke color. You can see we added flavor by slowly cooking it over charcoal. I'm going to give it a little bit of rest before we sear it. In the meantime, you and me, we're going to take a look at the next part of this recipe. This tuna fillet, and I'm happy about it, is the only thing that you can call a steak of the sea. It is a red tuna, and once you sear this up, it's going to be the closest thing that you can get to a real steak. And I absolutely love that idea. The way that this recipe is built up is very, very unique. First, I'm going to put on some mayonnaise, and this is going to be a thin layer of Japanese mayonnaise. Then I'm going to make some seasoning. I'm going to take a couple of these seaweed leaves, nori leaves, and I'm going to put them in my blender. And I'm going to grind it up. You won't believe how little of that is left. Look at that, kind of like a disco seaweed feeling. While we're at it, we might as well grind up these bonito flakes. Now normally bonito flakes, they are like tuna flakes, and you would use them as a broth. But we are going to grind these up about the same amount that we use in the nori leaves. And this is going to taste extremely well together with our tuna. There we go. Almost powder, but we still want it a little bit flaky. Time to put things together, and as a base I'm going to use the Texas barbecue rub because it's a base of pepper, salt, garlic, and onion powder. If you don't have this, you can go to our website and check out the Furikake rub, and you can see the amounts that you're going to need with salt and pepper, garlic and onion powder to make the Furikake rub. For now, I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of this to a bowl, followed by 2 tablespoons of the bonito flakes ground up and 2 tablespoons of the nori leaves. I'm adding a little bit more, but this is where you can eyeball things. The ratio is about the same amount of Texas barbecue rub, the same amount of nori leaves and bonito flakes. And this is where things get a little different. I'm going to add half the amount of sesame seeds. These are toasted sesame seeds. For a little bit of color, I'm also going to add some white sesame seeds. To spicing things up, I'm going to add chili flakes. You don't have to add too much to it if you don't like the spiciness, but I definitely like the spiciness, especially mixed with the tuna. Let's mix that up, and that is our own homemade Furikake rub. Look at that, heaven on a tuna. The Furikake is going on our tuna. Look at that. That mayonnaise acting like a binder so we can get loads and loads of flavor on our tuna. Now why would you want to put that much flavor on a tuna? Because the tuna in itself is very rich in iron, and you're going to taste that. Now you want a little bit of crust with flavor to offset that. And of course that is our Furikake barbecue rub. But to make sure it sticks on, we're gonna need that mayonnaise. And even better, once we start searing, that mayonnaise is gonna do its little magic trick. Time to set up the grill for the last phase of the cook. I'm gonna remove the grill grate, add more charcoal, open up the bottom vent, And wait for the barbecue to get up to temperature. I want to see that charcoal lit up so I can grill straight over the charcoal. I'm going to put some rice in my Japanese pot, add some water, and then put that pot over the now hot barbecue. And while we're cooking rice, we might as well grill up some vegetables. In this case, I'm using some leek and some Chinese cabbage. With everything out of the way, it's now time to sear our tuna. Our cast iron flat top grill is nice and hot, and it's going to be the perfect surface to steer that tuna steak on. It's gonna be so delicious. I'm gonna put a little bit of sunflower on the cast iron and then put the tuna steak straight on it. And as you can hear, we got that light sizzle going on. It's nothing violent. It's just a beautiful, bubbly, sizzling sound at the bottom of that tuna. We're actually gonna eat the inside raw, but the outside needs a bit of a crust for it to be exciting and flavorful. And the best way to get that crust is with that mayonnaise and oil working together, searing the outside. Because that tuna in itself does not have fat. And it won't render down, and it's going to stick and burn on the outside if you don't add any fat. To basically get a thin layer to fry. Been about 30 seconds, let's check how we're doing. Wow, look at that. That is a nice crust building up. We're gonna give it a little bit more time. Probably another 30 seconds, then we're going to rotate it and keep on rotating until we seared the whole tuna loin. This is what you want to see. You want to have a nice thick crust on the outside and at the same time still raw in the center. Look at that. All that pinkness. Now that I got a beautiful crust on, it's time to take it off. Now it's time for the Grand Primo, the Optimus Prime, the steak. And what does that Wagyu steak deserve? Yes, Tajima Wagyu fat. A little bit of beef tallow, let that melt. And I'm going to take my Wagyu steak, season it with a little bit of Texas PitmasterX barbecue rub. I go, do both sides, and then it goes onto the cast iron grill. And we're going to give it that beautiful cast iron crust. What was 1 star is now 2 stars of the show. These two are going to get together and they're going to make basically what we call a surf and turf, but then a Japanese version of it. Starting with a little bit of our rice. Some of our grilled vegetables with our ponzu yuzu sauce. Now it's time for our tuna. Wow. Of course I'm going to take a slice out of this. And as a condiment for our tuna steak, I got a delicious fresh wasabi. Now, other than the fake wasabi that comes out of a pack, this actually tastes good and it's not that sharp. You can compare it to horseradish, which goes super well with steak. And finally, I'm going to slice up my beautiful Wagyu steak and place it on top of the tuna. Because the final and mandatory seasoning of the Wagyu steak is the raw egg yolk. Wow. Now the egg yolk might seem a bit strange, but it's definitely a thing to do. At least once in your life. People with a lot of hangovers tried it a lot of times and it actually works. It's good for you. I want to get a little bit of everything. A little bit of tuna, veggies, steak, crust. You won't understand the egg until you had it. This is ridiculous.